And it says for the past 25 years, Monolith Productions has been obsessed with delivering a
We're gonna step in the game. If you can't hear the audio, let me know.
unique gaming experience for our fans. Starting with Blood, our very first title, all the way to our most recent offering, Middle Earth Shadow of War. We're constantly pushing the envelope to combine innovative gameplay, inventive narratives, cutting edge tech and AI, and stunning visuals. We are challenging ourselves even further to ensure that our next project is going to be our best yet. That's where you come in. For us to achieve that, we need the best and brightest talent the industry has to offer. Help us create our next triple A title. Now, it says in your new role as a senior systems engineer on our graphics team, you will work closely with the principal graphics engineer and the rest of your peers on the graphics and runtime teams to develop state of the art rendering technology for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, PC, and any new platforms we adopt. Any new platforms we adopt? What do you mean? Do you mean a new unannounced platform that's coming soon that no one wants to talk about? Are we talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, perhaps, Warner Brothers? I think so.
I'm gonna assume that means
why the
that
secrecy?
you can hear the audio, Jack Gates.
Any new platforms we adopt? I don't know. That's pretty interesting. That sounds suspiciously like an unannounced, NDA'd, redacted system. I don't know. It sounds kind of suspicious, don't you think? Huh. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
So, yeah. We'll step in the game, y'all. Yeah, so while I wait on some of our other guys to kind of join us in a moment here, welcome. Yeah, it's been a minute. So the intention was to have a guest here to talk about the game of the day, right? And that game of the day being what we all know to be a Zelda game, right? So it's coming pretty soon. As a matter of fact, in like another 30 or 40 minutes or so, Nintendo's gonna live stream the Treehouse for it, and that's gonna be kind of interesting. We'll see how that goes. But no, welcome. It's been a minute, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Trey was saying that the next Nintendo console is coming this year. Yeah, it's a bunch of. I mean, when I knew 2023 was going to be a long shot when COVID happened. Initially I didn't think it was going to be any later than 2023. Before the 2020 debacle happened. Once 2020 happened, I'm like, oh man, everything needs to be shifted to the right at least a year. With regards to that, not just because of the pandemic itself, but once we saw everything that happened to worldwide shipping and things of that nature, like Nintendo had to change partners in the middle of the cycle to make sure they were getting consoles out quick enough. So that's going to be another thing where that's going to be a big hurdle for Nintendo to tackle, especially if they plan on pushing new hardware out, right? And not just new hardware for us to play, like development kits got to get out too. Like, and if they don't get out in time to whoever is working on whatever, then they won't be able to do what they need to do. The big EAs of the world and your 2Ks of the world and whatnot, if they're going to support Nintendo system and they got the big money behind, they have like early pre-production development kits that are basically look like glorified PC towers with a bunch of secret labels on them or whatever. Before you even get what looks close to like what HAT001 looks like for the development Switch console. You get a PC box first before you ever get what's going to resemble the final hardware in your development environment. So those got to go out at some point. And how are you going to ship those? How are you going to control that? How are you going to produce those adequately and make sure they're same before they leave the door to go to the partners that you're going to be working with? So, yeah, the N64 shirt. Yeah, I've got a couple of these. Apparently me and Spawn Wave shop at the same place because he's got a couple of the same shirts that I have that are even non-video game related. But I blame my wife for that, not more so than him. But yeah, it's a thing. But yeah, it's just funny how the whole Switch Pro thing went away. They're just like, yeah, it was going to happen at some point, and then it just kind of got. How do you cancel a whole ass console? The only time that even came to fruition before was Factor 5 mentioning it back. I mean, they were saying they had it as early as 2007 when Nintendo was trying to decide whether or not they wanted to go high definition or not yet. Well, not 2007. That had to been like 2004. It was two years before Wii came out where they decided whether or not they were going to do HD or do just extend 480p. And that was, yeah, obviously if they launched that console, if they came out in 2005, 2006, with what essentially would have been the Wii U, man, the Wii in HD in 2006 would have been $600. There's no way that would have been possible at the time. So yeah, obviously they made a good decision with that in retrospect. They made a lot of money, made a lot of profit off of it. Hey, everybody in the chat. I see a couple of new faces. Dark Void, Monado Mario, all the usual suspects. Appreciate y'all showing up. I know y'all have other things to watch because Nintendo's going to be dropping information soon. But I kind of wanted to get out there and kind of rap a tad a little bit on some things that I haven't really got an opportunity to talk about. I think I've been on my soapbox long enough to talk about the Wii U library obviously being validated at this point. So we're on the 7th year of the Switch now at this point. We got another Zelda game launching tomorrow. So 7 years of a Switch being on the market, and this console is dominating. And there are things that people aren't talking about. It's the Treehouse is tomorrow. Okay, I thought it was today. And the game launches when? Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Friday or Sunday, one of the two. Those are the days that Nintendo chooses to pick. I don't know. Whatever. Whenever it gets to the house, it gets to the house, and then I'll play it and give you guys my impressions. So we got a system that essentially got all the Wii U games shipped to it again, right? So you're able to play your Wii U games again with the Switch, and everybody bought those games. And they all of a sudden magically those games are great, and people want the games that were on Wii U that never left Wii U to come to Switch. That's just why, if that system sucked so bad, like you wanted the Wii U games, but you didn't want the Wii U. Which to me makes no sense because Nintendo would have never made the games they made if they didn't make them around Wii U. Other developers wouldn't have made the games they made for Wii U if they didn't develop them around Wii U. So why do you want the product of that system and why they design games around that system sent somewhere else? For what reason? Exactly. Other than, I don't know, maybe it looks unpopular if you're holding an unpopular console. And you don't want to admit that you like what that unpopular console provides, which I don't know. It's really weird to me, but I just kind of feel like it's a foregone conclusion at this point that the first 8th generation console clearly had a lot of cool things about it, and a lot of people didn't want to admit it at the time because it wasn't the popular thing to admit. So a lot of Switch 2 talk now. Everybody's pretending to not ever talked about Switch Pro. People are not pretending to not talk about all the stupid kind of things they use as excuses for Nintendo needing a Switch Pro, SSDs and things like that. And I'm just like, no, I can hop in and out of a game really quick straight from suspend on Switch because it uses the NAND and RAM, believe it or not, to hold the place of my game when the system is off or in suspend mode. So you don't really need a PCIe 4.0 device to make that happen. You really don't. All you need is ingenuity and people that know how to program for the system that's put in front of them. So there's a bunch of positions, like you just saw the video I was showing with Dr. Trey and whatnot. There's going to be a bunch of positions available for developers that are obviously out there developing new games for. It's going to look like there's going to be a PS5 Pro. I think Sony, again, is probably going to be shaking because Nintendo, again, will be alone in the market starting the 10th generation. So they can't let that happen. So they'll release another Pro just like they did for PS4 Pro, and Xbox One X had to come out then at the time because, you know, they can't, they got to compete directly with Sony for whatever they're doing. And I noticed how people like quickly forgot about those add-on consoles. As much as they tried to say that Switch was an extension of Wii U to extend the Wii U's life, that attempt to do it with like literally the same hardware, they just increased the clock speeds. That didn't pan out too well because people just played their original consoles. I mean, a couple of them sold, but like they're not really talking about the sales, so obviously they didn't sell that well. I attempted to get a PS4 Pro, but ended up getting another PS5 instead. So there's that. And I never intended to get an Xbox One X because my OG Xbox One was doing well enough for me until I got a Series X. So still got to get a Series S though. That system to me seems like it's undervalued, and I think a lot more people should probably invest in it, especially if like more and more people are not buying physical games because it really doesn't make sense for those systems anymore. So if you get a system that doesn't have a disk drive, I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world. Just like getting the PS5 digital, which I'll upload the unboxing for that pretty soon. But no, that's pretty much the gist of the situation there. Like we're in the middle of, we're at a crossroads right now. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of this year and beyond, but we know it has something to do with Nintendo. They're pretty much just they're going to dictate how the market's going to go at this point. We see what's happening. Everything, all the stuff that I've been on my soapbox about for the longest time, talking about how we've reached the uncanny valley with regards to development anyway, of these quote unquote realistic looking games. And you're getting diminishing returns now. So now we got games coming out, even on PC, fucking breaking, like legitimately breaking. You try, no matter what type of hardware you have, we're clearly showing now that it was never about the hardware. It was about the developers having time to produce a great product for a targeted set of hardware. Say what you will about the Nintendo Switch specs. Like, we know that thing is significantly more capable than the Wii U, and it's still targeted at a resolution somewhat below Wii U, depending, because Wii U supported up to 1080p, and the Switch a lot of the times is targeted at like 540p. And I mean, what it has to do that resolution is more than enough, like significantly more than enough. So at some point, it's not the hardware, it's what engine are you using and what are you trying to shoehorn onto that system? Because we know, let's just be real. We know they're not starting from scratch. They're not just saying, you know what, we have this software development kit for Switch. Let's build a game around Switch and then try to port that to the other platforms, which would make all the sense in the world. No, instead, they take this PC, they develop for this PC, which is similar to the specs of the PS5 or whatever, and then they try to shoehorn it on PS5 and the Series X, and they're like, well, we can't get that to work on Switch because we don't want to rewrite our game. Well, that's what you had to do in all the other generations before. And that just appears to be, I can just say it's just blatantly obvious now, because now you got games breaking on PC. So you can't blame the hardware at this point. The hardware is fixed on the consoles. So right now, the only other variable would be whoever wrote the code. And now when you say whoever wrote the code, now we're like, okay, so is it the competence of the people who wrote the code? Or is it the intent of the people who are bossing the people that wrote the code themselves? So I can't sit here and say that, EA Dice is not capable of doing all these things. We know they reverse engineered code and all kind of stuff for like assembly language way back in the day. So we know they're capable, right? We know we got people there doing it. So what's stopping them from making sure, I don't know, shaders compile right on certain systems? What's stopping them? I'm just gonna say one thing here. It's gonna be a clock. It's gonna be a wallet. So if you want a finished product, you have to pay contractors to finish that product in time, right? And if they don't finish it in time, you got to pay for more time. Okay. If you want that product to be tested, you got to pay people to test it. And once you find bugs, you got to pay for people to fix said bugs and then go back and test it again and pay for testing again. So what we have seen lately is we don't have to finish the game because we can patch it later. We don't have to test the game. We don't need QA because we can just use the public to be QA. Hey, join our public alpha. Like, alpha? Really? Maybe beta, but alpha? And you break the game or whatever, send all these flags up, they collect all this data, and maybe you get a complete game when it's time for the product to go gold. Maybe. But even then, what platforms are they targeting? Are they targeting every single platform? Or is a certain platform holder talking to that publisher and saying, hey, make sure ours is good? And that's the one that third-party company focuses on because they're getting a bigger check from, let's say in this example, Sony, right? To say, hey, well, the PS5 version, make sure it's good. Make sure it's good. So now we're in a situation where the Xbox Series X is more capable than the PlayStation 5 because they're essentially the same chipset. Series X just has more shaders, right? And now you got that system having lower performance in that game, not because of hardware, because people want to assume it's just the hardware, right? Not because of hardware, because the hardware is more capable, but you're getting a weaker product at the end of the day because business decisions, essentially. And all I've been saying is that's exactly what's been happening all the time for Nintendo ports. All the time. The thing that you're complaining about now on Series X, because your favorite Jedi game isn't performing the way that you think it should be, or your favorite first-party game, fighting vampires, running at half the frame rate you expected. Money and time. It has nothing to do with what the system is capable of. I mean, there's nobody here that would think in their right mind that a Series X first-person shooter can't be 4K at 60 frames per second. Of course it can. The question is, what are they doing? What was that engine targeting originally? And what are they doing to adapt it and make sure it works well? And obviously, when you're talking about studios being acquired in the middle of working on 50 million other projects, you're talking about third-party studios that you're targeting. I mean, you got developers out here now saying they're going to create extra stuff to make sure it runs good on Steam Deck. Then they have, your PC release. You have your Xbox release. I mean, they're still developing for Xbox One and PS4 in a lot of cases. And obviously the 9th generation platforms. And should it include Switch in that, then Switch is in there too. And they shoehorn all these games on here. And they don't target any of them specifically, which is crazy to me. All it is just it's a release. It is how can I say this? If you were developing for a PC, right? It's nebulous. You don't know what the configuration is going to be. You don't know what shaders you're targeting. You don't know what memory configurations you're targeting. You don't know what type of CPU you're targeting, right? It could be a giant pool of any of this. And you pick a minimum configuration, a recommended configuration, and a high-end recommended configuration for whatever you're doing, and hope everything works out well in the end, right? You have these long lead ups to load all the shaders because you don't know what GPU your game is going to be using at the time for each individual PC out there. But with the console, with the console, you can pre-cache all the shaders or stream them into memory in real time. And you don't have to worry about the stuff you see when you try to emulate a Wii U game and have to wait 20 minutes for all the shaders to populate. You don't have to worry about weird glitches and memory management issues if no Xbox One is configured differently, if no Series X is configured differently, if no PS5 is configured differently. You know exactly what's going to happen. If no Nintendo Switch is configured differently, to the point where the Switch Lite, which is still the same thing as the OG Switch that launched in 2017. So every single Nintendo Switch out there has the exact same configuration and the same environment. So it's just bad. The WWE, that 2018, that WWE 2018 was a bad show right there. I appreciate all y'all coming through. The Hayes RJ, I see Aries is in here. I already mentioned Jack Gates already. NEP, I believe I remember seeing you before. Not gonna say Nep because I'm just saying Nep. Gwen is in here. What's going on? And Brian Smith in here. Yeah, it's just one of those scenarios, man, where we are seeing in real time. I mean, not saying I'm Nostradamus. This stuff is common sense. Like I've been saying for the longest time, a game is an application. And I've been saying for the longest time, a console is a dumbed down PC, specifically configured to run a game application, and that's it. That's all they do. Now you can do stuff like run Netflix and stuff like that because the developers for Netflix or whatever are targeting that hardware, which is still a game console. So you target that game console with game console code to make sure it optimizes and runs well there. You have a specific version of a video compiler or another type of video compression tool that's works specifically for the SDK for that console that you're working for. Some of them directly support native features like well, I can't think of it right now. I don't know what all the wrappers are for MP4 right now. H.264 and H.265 is what I'm thinking right now. I don't know why I had a brain fart on that just now, but yes, those type of compression wrappers. So, game idea guy is in the chat. Okay, what's going on? But yeah, that's essentially what we're doing here. Is pretty much that kind of realization is that we got that going. So it's just crazy seeing all of it happen in real time. So now we got, all this talk about a Switch 2 or whatever, right? Which, for all intents and purposes, I want everybody to know this. When Nintendo announces the successor to Nintendo Switch, Gaming Press is still going to act the same. IGN is still going to do a next-gen console watch and probably still exclude Nintendo. somehow. There will be, and they definitely want to talk about them alone. Even though they're the only next generation hardware that's going to be coming right now, they'll officially be starting the 10th generation. They will not have their show specifically just be talking about that system. That's not happening. Please believe that. Even though that's the name of the show, Next Gen Console Watch, that's not going to happen. So those things expect that foolishness to happen. It's going to be weird. So they might even wait until there's a PS5 Pro to talk about that, even though it won't be the start of a new generation either. It will be extending the 9th generation. But Nintendo started the 9th generation, so their next new hardware will be the 10th, which means that their new hardware should be the only thing on what would be called a next-gen console watch. Kind of wonder what that red stuff was back there in the background, but that's my my R-Wing from what's the name of this game? Starlink. Yeah, it's back there in the corner there, driving me crazy for a little bit. But yeah, essentially, expect nothing to change. They're still going to do what they do. They're going to come up with every excuse. They're going to try to bury Switch 2 before it even launches. Even though Nintendo is already they're going to do what they know they need to do. They're going to do a reveal. And when they reveal it, they're going to put it all out directly to everybody before the press gets wind of it. Like there may be like some leaks once production starts happening, but I got a strange feeling that Nintendo's going to put out a message before production starts happening so they can control the leaks. So, because once production starts happening, Semi-Accurate is going to know everything at that point. And whether they decide to put everything, once they decide to put out, hey, who the partner is going to be and what the speeds and fees are of the new SoC, that stuff will be leaked everywhere. Essentially, they'll put it out because Semi-Accurate is a pay site, but all of the gaming press have accounts with that. So they'll hold on to that and try to figure out when they want to release their version of it and then talk about it or whatever. And then your favorite leakers on Twitter, they'll put it out there like they came up with it. And I'm like, yeah, they had it for like a month before. You just had to have a subscription to know what it was, just like for Switch. Way back in late March, early April, 2016, for those not in the know. That Semi-Accurate report is gonna be the best $100 spent on the website. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're gonna get it. They're gonna get it quick. So, but the thing I think Nintendo's gonna get in front of it before there's any like mass production. They'll probably have a couple of they'll probably do production of maybe 100 or so development kits, but that's going to be so tightly controlled there wouldn't be anything that would show up on their radar, because they would have what would alarm Semi-Accurate would be a large amount of production, and 100 units is not something that's gonna tip them off like that, not like that. But if all of a sudden Foxconn is like, yeah, we're printing 900 a day or 900 every 6 hours, yeah, they'll have a report pretty quick. But in the middle of that, you're gonna have, so they're gonna get in front of that probably, more than likely, if Nintendo's smart. Then they'll come out with their YouTube video, Twitch feed, or whatever, and tell you everything about the system or whatever, and then go dark until it's time for it to launch. I mean, that's literally what they did with Switch. They're like, hey, this is what it's about. This is what it does. Dark. And then like a couple of weeks before it gets ready to launch, tell you a little bit more and then go from there. That's the way to choke out gaming press, so they can't, because now what they can't do is they can't lie. You already talked directly to the customer and live streamed everything that about the product, right? So they can't go and pretend to be confused because there's no private event that they saw. They can't go and then mistranslate it if it's all being streamed live to everybody all at the same time, including them. There's no way for them to turn around and then intentionally misconstrue what the system is supposed to be and what it's supposed to do. And I really hope they have everything nailed down with Macronix, because they're the big question mark on all of this right now. I know I haven't gotten to talking about Zelda yet. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Right now we're kind of on Switch 2. I don't know how I got here, but we're here. But Macronix is going to be the big question mark because we need to know whether we're going to be dealing with these again, little things that go in here or not. Because if they don't have a decent deal or there's not good production, it's very possible this system might be a fat system, which means we won't be using cartridges again. It may have a cartridge slot for backwards compatibility, but there may be a good chance that this system might not use cartridges. And if Dr. Trey is right with his assumption about WB talking about supporting this new platform, I got a strange feeling they don't plan on shoehorning a game down, so they're printing a disc. I hate to say that, but that might be the possibility at this point. It may be Matsushita once again getting a deal with Nintendo, and I mean Macronix will still make money somehow because they'll some type of ROMs or whatever Nintendo's going to want. They'll make money off of that. But as far as game cartridges themselves, unless they found a better way to expand their extra ROM capacity, it's not gonna. And Nintendo's not just gonna say, "Well, just give us NAND," because NAND dies. It's not controlled enough. The whole reason Nintendo went with them for this particular product is because it dies after 60 years. So the read-only content on it is rated for 60 years worth of aging. And NAND could die any day. Like as soon as you put that product out and you're like, hey, I just got this cartridge that's all flash, like any cell on that thing could die and all your media is gone. It's high capacity, it reads and writes, but how long is it going to last? Especially with anybody between ages of 5 and 95, which is Nintendo's target audience, right? So you got babies on both ends. You got a 5-year-old over here that thinks that the cartridge slot accepts sandwiches, and then you got a 95-year-old over here who also thinks the cartridge slot accepts sandwiches, and you're going to have all these kind of issues where they're not durable, and that's just not something. I don't think that's anything that they can afford. They literally made the cartridges taste bad. They already know what they're doing. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Andre. They could just put out codes for the bigger games. Yeah, that appears to be what's happening already now with the other systems. They've just kind of given up. You would figure Sony would be willing more to foot the bill for this because they want to sell their 100 gig discs to people. They want to sell these big Blu-rays because that's their media, that's their platform, right? They make more money off of making that available, so they can sell that same technology to Microsoft because Microsoft doesn't mind paying for the Blu-ray license. So Sony makes a buck for every Xbox Series X out there that's sold, believe it or not. If you guys did not understand this, yes, they get a piece of the licensing fees that everybody that uses a Blu-ray product, Sony gets a cut of that. So it's a win-win for them. So I just don't understand why they haven't really been pimping it that way. They should have been. They should have been pushing it way more. But it appears to be now like we're having games come out and like half of the games on a disc and you got to download the rest. So even on those systems, which it's just odd to me. I understand games are in 4K, but this is a lot more than the resolution change at this point. Textures aren't that big. It's not just textures. It's all this lossless audio. There's lossless video for some reason. Why we're still doing FMVs in 2023, I don't understand. If these quote unquote graphics look so good, I don't understand why we got FMVs on this at this point. Like you should be able to do it with the real time engine, but that stuff's still happening and it's taking up a lot of space. And it doesn't help that a lot of these game engines were designed initially for PC and they don't plan on crunching any of that stuff down when they port them over with regards to third party. So I don't know if you noticed, but the Sony games, if they're Sony first party, they're a little bit smaller than the third party games that you're getting. Some of them are pretty big, but you get other games that have a large game world and they're 40, 50, 60 gigs maybe, and we're talking about PS5. So It's really the third party that's kind of like they're not even trying. They're like compression. What's that? They don't care at all. And but you have a system that does decompression on the fly. There's things there. Use those tools. Make the game look good. Like you don't need a brand new texture for every single area that you go into. That part too as well. Like you can repeat these textures. Nobody cares that there's a brand new texture every time you walk around a corner. There are scenes that people aren't even going to see, and you spent over 100 megs per frame as on a render target that nobody's going to turn around and see with the camera. So that's bothersome. That's bothersome as well. So it's just game development has gotten out of hand. It's gotten bloated, and it bothers me because that's the beginning of this video. This is what I really wanted to show because it's hilarious. Because if I let me pull this up real quick so you guys can see it, but that's kind of funny. I'll go back to it real quick. See if I can pull it up. I just wanted you to see this because this part is what is hilarious to me. And I wanted you guys to see it. Here we are.
This has been the same problem for 30 years. Like
right,
it's
so
no worse than it's ever been.
Listen to
Hello
this,
there,
which is hilarious to me.
As I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Howdy, Damon.
Hello there. And Max Scoville, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Hey.
And this week we're also joined by IGN publisher.
First thing I'll note, it is almost 3 years in for these systems. Why is it still called this? That's the first thing that's funny to me. Like we're going on 3 years here and we're saying next gen console. Well, I can understand if they're talking about maybe Steam Deck or something because that's still like a year removed or whatever. But we're still talking about Xbox Series X and S and PS5 in year of our Lord 2023. These systems launched in 2020.
John Davison. John, welcome back to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
And there's so much to talk about this week. Last week we were talking about Star Wars Jedi Survivor. We were heaping praise upon it. But we recorded the show before the game was actually out in the wild. Still a very good game. We're all just talking before we were filming here that how much we're enjoying it.
Nintendo
However,
colors,
it launched into very, very rough shape on PC. And that is unfortunately becoming a narrative in this year, 2023. I believe it's 6 big AAA games that have launched onto PC in a barely working state this year, just this year so far. And that includes the Last of Us PC port. Some of the games, Hogwarts Legacy also had a lot of trouble at launch. It just seems to be like this is happening more and more often, and I don't understand why.
He doesn't understand why. He really doesn't understand why. Now, what's hilarious to me is any other time, the first thing they will say is this game isn't running well, or the hardware doesn't appear to be able to act to the hardware. But since we're talking about PC and platforms they prefer, now we're confused. I've been stomping for the longest time saying that it's the code. For the longest time. And now all of a sudden now they're confused and they don't get it.
It is. Even Redfall, which is out now. This issue is not exclusive to just PC. Jedi Survivor also has plenty of problems on PS5 where I'm playing it. It's crashed 4 or 5 times, which is very unusual for a console game to do. And Redfall, an Xbox first-party exclusive, launched into very rough shape even on Xbox Series X. So, John, why don't you kick things off? It's not unheard of for games to launch in a buggy, rough state. It just seems like this is happening more and more often today.
I disagree. Okay. So the old guy is here, so I'm going to tell old man stories about the olden days. this has been the same problem for 30 years. Like it's no worse than it's ever been. Like there was a couple of I was sort of like reading up and reminding myself of games that I had reviewed years ago. Wing Commander 3 came out in 1994. So I think there's two problems we're talking about here. One is whether the ambition of the game developers is a little ahead of what the hardware can do, which has been a pretty constant problem throughout all game development.
So I want y'all to notice the first thing that he did there. The first thing that he did was he moved the goalposts. Because what is the name of this podcast? It's Next Gen Console Watch, right? And so he talks about, well, I'm the older guy here or whatever, right? Well, chances are we're probably close to the same age. Are you talking about 30 years of this being a problem? Yeah, maybe. But the first example he brings up, PC game? What are we doing? And so I guess my issue is, yes, maybe that's the case back then before there was even, programmable graphics. Then at that time, you're talking about TNT graphics cards back then, a completely different type of scenario, right? That was a weird transition. That was a weird situation in which we're talking about a PC life cycle in which the N64 came in as a console and had better performance. Because it was doing things that graphics cards then at the time weren't able to do. By the end of the year, PC graphics cards could, but at the time that console came out, at least in Japan in 1995, there wasn't too many PCs doing that at the time. So, of course, yeah, there's going to be issues. And back then, yeah, you made a game that was above whatever. So now it has the quote unquote crisis effect. Can it run Crisis or whatever kind of situation on that side of the house? But that isn't the case for a home console. Home consoles back then, you had dedicated teams for each platform back then, where it's like, oh, this game can't run. Oh, well, I don't know it, because during those times, you got a completely different game. If the SNES was better at something that the Genesis does, you couldn't tell anyway, because there was a completely different version of The Lion King and a completely different version of Aladdin on each one of those platforms. They played differently. You had bits and pieces of, Turtles in Time stuff in Hypersong Heist on Genesis. You had completely different versions of Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2, what have you. And even though, yeah, they were supposed to be the same type of game or whatever, they had targeted versions of those games specifically for those consoles based around what they could do. There wasn't, hey, let me take this SNES code and shoehorn it onto a Genesis. It wouldn't work, because all these consoles, they only read assembly and direct registers and things that were impossible to quote unquote port. Like, you have to rewrite the game for the platform that you're going to be on. But now we have this high level shader language that can be ported anywhere, and we're just not trying anymore. So I just wanted y'all to see that. Like, the first thing he did was shift. He shifted the conversation away. I wanted y'all to see that. So I'll let him finish.
And then the other one is stuff that's just broken. So 30 years ago, and two examples of that was Wing Commander 3. It had some crazy high tech specs, but it was like, it needed a 486DX33, which is a processor running at 33 megahertz. That's how much slower. I don't think there's a device in your house that's that slow anymore. And the game just would not work on the highest spec. It wasn't until a year later, when the Pentium 100 shipped, that the game would even run reasonably well. And then that same year, Peter Molyneux, always a very ambitious game,
what up?
put out Magic Carpet, which a lot of people may not be familiar with, but it was a 3D game where you were on a magic carpet and you could morph the terrain by casting spells at it. That game, you couldn't beat it at all when it shipped, because level 50 just didn't work properly. And there were 5 levels in the game missing, and there was no way to patch it. The only way that game ended up being fixed was when they did another pressing of the game. They shipped different code on a physical disk. So even going back that far, like there's other stories. Space Station Silicon Valley had you can't 100% it in the original version of the game, which most people own because there was something missing from the code. Like games have shipped broken since the dawn of video games. Where we have it better now, and this is like a pretty contrarian point compared to what we're seeing people complain about on Twitter and Reddit and stuff, is now they can fix it. Back then, it was like that was it. Once it was out, you were stuck with it.
Do you think that's a benefit?
No, actually, it's more of a hindrance now.
But you see how he's trying to spin it into a benefit?
Yeah, that's crazy. And wait. He was talking about PC, right?
Yeah, all his examples were PC, but since this is next gen console watch, we're still talking about these new platforms, they could just get a patch, right?
Huh.
But he didn't talk about any of the older console games that shipped complete.
Yeah,
that shipped with all these features and whatnot. And granted, back then, since cartridges were priced based on ROM size, right?
Mm-hmm.
You paid anywhere between $50 to $90 for a game, depending on how big the ROM size was. But your game was complete.
Right.
You had everything in it that you needed. And if there were incomplete things in there, you didn't know it because they closed the loop on the game and cut that part out. Yeah. So if you, I don't know, use a Game Genie or something, you can go and find all these incomplete levels or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But the finished product that went gold, you could never really get to those loops unless you broke boundaries or whatever and went into the back of the game to find that kind of stuff, test rooms and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Chris Houlihan room in the Link to the Past, which is, for the longest time, I thought I was crazy. I'm like, dude, I fell in this hole. And I was supposed to go in to fight Ganon, and I fell in this hole, and it wasn't Ganon. Like, and people were like, "No, you lying, man." I said, "Man, it's gonna happen." And I have people come to my house, and I try to go in there, and then Ganon shows up, and I'm like, "Dude, I promise you it happened." And they're not. So, but yeah, all it was is just that was their protection for buffer underrun, basically. Like if you did something too fast and it didn't know where you're supposed to be on the map, you went into that room instead. Yeah. And obviously people know how to repeat that now thanks to social media and stuff like that, and people speed running. But at the time then, that was magical to me, and I'm like, I can't repeat this. It just happens when it wants to happen, and I don't understand why. So it was one of those things back then, which meant that the game was tightly wound. That was a finished product, because the only way for you to get into that room is for you to literally try to break it. And he's not really talking about that. And I don't think, and that's kind of like, I was almost going to do a whole video on just this, because it was just so strange to me how they were talking about this. And it was just like, you guys are acting like you're saying it's a problem because you have to address it, because if not, people are going to say you guys are, blowing smoke up people's ass, and how blatant it is, and how the backlash is. So they have to do something, right? So they do this talk, and it's kind of like later on they're going to blame the gamers. Watch, it's going to happen here. They're going to say something stupid here in a minute.
Yes, but it seems to me like those are more isolated incidents back in the day, whereas in a span of just months, it's just release
I
after
don't
release
think they
after
were
release.
isolated. It was. I would say every version of Wing Commander probably shipped broken. I mean, that was Origin Systems, which is now part of EA. They had a lot of very ambitious games. They all shipped broken. They all shipped like they didn't work properly on the hardware. It was way too ambitious. And then you go through time, and you got like games like Crysis, which came along, which was way more ambitious than the hardware was capable of doing, and is still cited as an example of that to this day. Of like, can it run Crysis? Is
again, Crysis is another example of a PC game. Like he hasn't mentioned a single console game yet. I just want y'all guys to understand that.
Still a meme, right? And I think every time there's something that people really want, they think that it's like, oh my God, this thing that I love and it doesn't work properly. But it's been that way forever. I'm not saying that's excusable, but it's not like a recent phenomenon. This is like 30 plus years of game releases have suffered this same way.
How long did it take people to figure out that those games were that broken? Because I wonder how much of this is a byproduct of just how much communication there is. Because Yeah.
It was like if the magazines would review it, and if they caught the problem, it would be in the review. Like, this game is so broken, you can't finish it. Like, I mean, going back even further, there was a Terminator 2 game on the Commodore 64, which they had to get out in time for the movie release. And they didn't finish all the levels, so they just made the level that they did finish so hard you couldn't beat.
Again, Commodore 64 is probably about the closest to a console that he's come to thus far.
Right.
And Commodore 64, just to be real, that system was seen as an afterthought at that time, at the release of this game. There were other platforms that got a version of this game that were more complete. They just had to cater to this platform then at the time, and obviously this specific project was rushed.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other versions of this same game that didn't have these problems. So they didn't even look like this, but it's just going.
I was just gonna say, I don't remember. There was an NES version, if I remember, and it doesn't look anything like that.
Look at what they chose to use as examples. This blows my mind. Like, because if they have to use consoles then at the time, we're talking about the Super NES, the Jaguar, and you know, the PlayStation was coming around the corner then at the time. There were demos of it in '94 early.
Mm-hmm.
And this wasn't the result you normally got with a finished product back then. And they know this, which is probably why they're using these extreme examples from, I guess this is 1993.
Beat it. I mean, like, these are the kinds of things that would happen back then. And the only way, and it wasn't until bulletin boards and stuff started becoming a thing that people were chatting, but like, there wasn't this group think which turned into group rage. That didn't exist.
Well, now it's like, I mean, before you'd have to pick up a magazine. Now it's like everyone has a phone in their pocket. And
there it is. They just blamed people. They blame you, essentially, for calling them out on their shit. Because what should be happening here is them saying, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, this always happens. No, why is it happening? It's not the hardware now. We know it's not the hardware. Whose fault is it?
Oh, he did say their ideas of the programmer. What did he say? The developer's ideas
their
are
vision or whatever.
Too ambitious for the hardware.
But who do they work for?
Right.
You know, I'm going to be cynical here, but who the developers work for is also who they work for. That's who pays their bills for their ads and clicks. And so obviously they can't call them out.
Right.
They can't even fix themselves to say it's the developer's fault at this point. They just say it's the ambition. Like, no, it's their code. It's fucking broken. Why is it broken? Because they're being forced to rush it. Who's forcing them to rush it? The people that pay for your ads. And us saying things like this gets them to say, no, it's the gamer's fault. You YouTubers, you're a problem. How dare you call us out? But look how they have to they have to squirm.
It's crazy that you like talking about somebody else's ambitions. Like in layman's term, if you're talking about somebody who wants it, your kids or somebody who wants to be a basketball player. Hey, I want to go to college. You know, I want to do MBA and all this other stuff. And they're practicing every day and they get tired. And you're like, well, it's your fault because your ambitions were too high. What? What? But they practice in that. You know what I'm saying? You should know how much you put into what you're gonna do. And if that's your ambition, if that's your end goal, you're gonna see it through. You know what I'm saying? You're not hardware, regardless of what it is, whether it's the Switch, whether it's Windows Vista, like whatever you planned on doing on that system, you're going to know all the parameters and your ambition is going to go around that. So too ambitious for the hardware sounds ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Everybody watching, by the way, this has relevance because I'm going to get back to the topics that I was talking about before. This is all still extending from the whole situation about Switch 2 and third-party publishers at the time. This is all an extension of that. That's why I'm going through this, because you need to see where their stance is and where they're never going to go, so you understand why. Yeah, skill issue. That's a good uni meme there. But you need to understand this is where their stance is. They're never going to go and say the publisher forced the developer to rush this product. They're never going to do it.
Unless it's Nintendo.
Oh, of course, then. Oh, they'll blame them all day.
I think Nintendo should have gave them more time. They were on crunch. They were doing this. They worked so hard. Pokemon Company, they worked so hard and didn't have enough time. And Nintendo just wanted that game to come out at this point in time. Little do they know that Pokemon Company also gets a paycheck. They also get a say.
It's funny because when the game didn't run well on Switch or Wii U, it was the hardware's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Now the game's not running well on these other systems. Now they have no idea whose fault it is.
Yep.
They can't figure it out. I don't know. Maybe the PS5 is too weak.
No, it's just the ambitions. Oh. They're just way too ambitious.
Oh.
Which, if you really read between the lines, wouldn't that mean the hardware was too weak?
And here's the other thing too, right? So you see these games, and then once they finally release these games, you're like, oh yeah, these are really nice shaders and graphics, but I can't go everywhere like I can in Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do we really mean by ambition?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know what that word, be a little, elaborate, please. That's what I want to say. Elaborate. You mean ambitions.
I'll tell you, like, these are all reviewers sitting up here now, right? And one old panelist or whatever from back in the day, who's probably, he might be my junior, but we're talking about, at any point in time, if you start talking about specifications or anything like that, first thing they'll tell you is, well, I'm not a developer. So, but you're quick to talk about what somebody's ambition is based on what? Like,
right.
Is there some type of magical code that they're writing that is too demanding for what's happening right now? And if that's the case, then I'm just going to say the hardware is too weak then.
Right.
He's too weak. Because
he's strong enough.
Grand, and therefore you need to adjust.
Yeah.
It's just strange.
That's so funny. They say ambition.
They're twisting themselves in pretzels. They can't say, hey, look, they rushed this game because budget, because money. It's for the same reason Nintendo doesn't get ports. For the same reason. It has nothing to do with technology. It has everything to do with this same problem right here.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't say it for the life of them because it'll be another Gerstmann gate. And they know it.
And day one, thousands, millions of videos pop up of people talking about this new game, this hotly anticipated thing. People go live on Twitch. It gets spread all over social media. So I imagine some of that is communication, but again, it's also more variables, you know?
And you'd go into EB or Babbage's or whatever, or your local game store, and the guy behind the counter would be like, hey, have you heard Redfall's completely broken? That would be how you heard about it.
Ryan,
the town square of York.
Ryan, you've also been around the block a few times covering the games industry. What's your take? Is it not that new a phenomenon?
I'm gonna go ahead and end it here, right? But see, like, you saw how they basically blame the gamer again. They start talking about, you're able to communicate, and that's how you can blah blah blah. Like, at no point did they fault, hey, this is your jank ass code.
Yeah, that where yeah.
Later on,
how did they find out? Oh, because it's,
later on in this same video, they talk about Skyrim, and they talk about how it's charming how jank the code is in that game. They always did that though. They did that when Skyrim first launched.
Yeah.
They were literally promoting how broken it was.
Yeah. What is it? Nostalgia. It's nostalgia.
Killing me, man. Like, so this is what we're dealing with. So I want everybody to know, because that was before you came on, Sandstorm. That's what I was saying at that point. What you just saw is what you're going to continue to see. It's not going to change. They're going to continue to do this, and they're going to continue to have excuses for the status quo. And the status quo is Nintendo is not our preference unless a big game comes out that we want to play, i.e. Zelda.
Right.
We think the hardware is too weak and it can't run anything until we see a game that actually runs on it well, and then we'll pretend it didn't happen. We don't think certain audiences are there. So please don't ever put Call of Duty on there, because now nobody will have an excuse to buy any of the other platforms. Because if you could play Mario and Call of Duty and Madden and GTA and Red Dead all on one system, why the fuck would you buy a PlayStation or Xbox?
Right. Anywhere you want to go on top of that.
They know this. So they have to control this message this way.
Yeah.
They know this. And that's not the best interest of the third parties, because the third parties get to talk to Sony and Microsoft, who do their job for them. Third parties are supposed to be paying for every single ad for a game that airs. They're supposed to be working deals with platforms to just say, hey, how many times have you seen a Call of Duty ad with a PlayStation logo making the ding at the beginning?
Right.
That's not supposed to be a Sony thing. Activision's supposed to pay that bill.
Mm-hmm.
So
let me ask you a question then. We got Tears of the Kingdom coming out, and I've been thinking about this for a while now. So when the Switch first came out, we got Breath of the Wild, and they really couldn't control the narrative like how they wanted to. Another Wii U type of deal.
Nintendo got in front of them. That's what I was mentioning before you came on.
So now that we got Tears of the Kingdom, how many of those people? Because I'm kind of in the middle. I'm kind of in the middle on it, because I can see, because of Breath of the Wild doing so well and everybody loved Breath of the Wild, I can see a lot of these journalists like just, oh, it's the greatest gift to God that we got, Tears of the Kingdom. But on the other side of that, I can see this same narrative that's going on now, like Tears of the Kingdom is great, but it's having performance issues. There's dipping here and dipping there, and it just doesn't. This is the one I'm looking for right here. It just doesn't have that same polish like Breath of the Wild does. Little do they know, when Breath of the Wild first came out, the Korok Forest was the only thing that everybody was trying to talk about. Oh, it dips so bad. It's a slideshow once you get into the core. So I'm kind of wondering, how do you think? Do you think
it's not a slideshow even on Wii U? Isn't that never that bad? The slideshow was Ocarina of Time. But everybody swears that's the greatest game ever. It got 100%, whatever. Like, yeah, that's what they're going to do. That was part of my predictions here. They're going to continue. Like, so Tears of the Kingdom is going to come out. It's going to have rave reviews, because they can't say it's a bad game. Because if they rate it a 7, because they want to, that's the messaging they want to put out, because they're doing their bidding for, whoever, Activision or whoever at the time, 2K or whatever, right? They will have to contend with everybody else rating it higher, and then then their image is tarnished at that point, so they have to stick to it. Not saying IGN would do that, but if another publisher would do, like we've seen it before with new gaming news sites trying to launch, and the first thing they try to do is they try to review bomb the game just for clout, to see if they get, and they end up having to switch their review. So you'll see like a good game will come out, Nintendo or no, it could just be a real good game come out, and there'll be the one website that gave it like a 2 out of 10, and everybody else is giving it like a 7 or something, or 8 at the lowest. And you go back to Metacritic again, all of a sudden either that review is gone altogether, or now it's a little bit higher. Now it's 6.
Yeah. Trying to see what everybody else says.
Yeah. And, I mean, I guess they missed the memo on Game Journal Pros, because that also happened. I really want all my followers to understand that was the point of the movement from the beginning. It was not some right-wing bullshit about a whole bunch of people being mad that some girl somewhere, I guess they thought they found attractive, was sleeping with another guy, and this whole thing about a game that wasn't really that good got a whole bunch of notoriety on websites, and people were like giving her back. It was never about that. It was about the fact that they found that gaming press was colluding.
Mm-hmm.
Had nothing to do with the game. Depression Quest, I think, was the name of the game. No, nobody cares about that. Everybody was mad that, hey, this gaming magazine that I bought from GameStop is colluding to see if their reviews are similar to what's on IGN and what's on GameSpot. That's like, y'all have a Hippocratic oath. What is happening?
Right.
That's pretty bad.
Right.
And they swept it under the rug and did some of what they just did in the video we just watched. Let's blame the angry people on social media. Like, bruh, like there are screenshots. It's not like it goes away. It's not like it goes away. The hashtag still exists on Twitter. You can still see everything that happened.
Once it touched the internet, it's always on the internet.
Yeah. Gershman Gate still exists. You can look that up. Like, this man literally lost his job for telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, say what you will. I disagree with a lot of things that Jeff Gershman says, but his decision to just say, you know what, fuck you. This is my review. And they did what they did with him. You know, I'm all for that. So, like, the truth should be out there. You should never feel pressure to write a review a certain way just because somebody's standing over you saying we got to pay the bills.
Right.
That at that point, that means you need another job. You need to go somewhere else because obviously that place is corrupt.
Especially if they send somebody else to edit what you wrote or ghost write for you, if you will. This needs correction, so you need to correct that.
Yep.
But I said the right thing. No. That wasn't the right thing. You didn't write that right. Rewrite that.
Yeah, so I understand why you feel nauseous, right? But it's, it is what it is, man. We just try to move.
Oh no, man! I get entertainment by them. I just find it's like watching Family Guy to me.
Can't spell ignorant without those 3 letters, right? You gotta have it. So, I mean, that's just this part right here too.
Funny enough, I've changed it to 9th generation, so I'm assuming somebody changed it back to 8 and locked it.
I changed the Wii U specs once I started seeing the shader counts, and I increased them. And somebody went back in there, and they changed it back and reduced it all the way to like 192 shaders. And I'm like, there's no way that we use that week. It's not. And so once they did that, I was actually using a VPN to change it, and somehow I'm still blocked every time I try to go to that Wikipedia page. I can't update it. So somehow over VPN, they're able to they're able to block me from editing just that one Wikipedia page. Any other Wikipedia page I can go to, but if I go to the AMD graphics accelerators page, I cannot go there and modify those specifications. And I linked to everything that was relevant then at the time to include the changes in clock speeds, what was last known about the shader count and why, and whether it was what type of part it was, whether it was VLIW5 or VLIW4 based on how old the GPU was at the time. And the specs that they were using in here to talk about Wii U was from 2009. And we know the data has been updated since then, and AMD didn't make a chip that old they were selling anymore. Right. So, and you saw this whole situation. I don't know. Did you see the whole back and forth on that in 2016? Like December 2016, they were debating back and forth on what Nintendo Switch is. Like they were having arguments on Twitter about on Wikipedia about what this is.
Yeah,
so the mods in Wikipedia were arguing.
I feel like we were kind of a part of that, and we were nonstop, just like. How is this whole hard to understand? Like different media That's it. Like,
Yep.
completely different media.
That's completely different media. It's not backwards compatible.
No.
Completely different software development environment. Like
UI, everything. Like what's if anything, the PS3 and the PS4 would be closer related than the Switch and the Wii U. Like, are you serious?
Yep. And somebody also mentioned in the chat too. Like, I mean, pretty soon is going to be the Switch competed with the PS5 and the Series X longer than the PS4 and Xbox One anyway.
Yeah.
So it won't even matter.
But you know, I feel like as of now, that for the most part has kind of died down.
Yeah.
Most of the people who are still like it's 8th generation, you can rarely find one of those. But for that reason though, because now that we're getting into the PS5 and stuff, and we're still getting, you know, I say but the Switch is still getting some of those PS5 games, and those games just so happen to maybe come later on PS4 or what have you. Like, that kind of conversation is not as strong as it used to be, you know, of it trying to be in. Well, it wasn't strong to me in the first place, but it's not nearly as strong with the whole 8th generation talk. Huh?
Yeah, it's just, but I do expect it to happen again, because now Switch 2 or the Switch successor is going to come out, and what they don't want to do is admit that it's 10th generation. So they'll say, well, this Nintendo's 9th generation. Wait, so it's the successor to Switch, right? So Switch was what generation? And they're gonna be like, it's 8th again. Oh, okay. Okay, so what was Wii U?
Right. That was 8th the first time. 8th the first time. They gotta put 2 8s in there.
Nintendo makes a completely different platform with different media, different development tools, and it's the same generation.
So similar to Andre, what he said here, I'm really hoping when they finally announce Switch 2 or what have you, whatever they name it, that they put on Twitter and, like, you know, a commercial will kill it. It's dead. If they put in every single generation that they've had, and then, you know, they put, you know, generation 10 or something like that, like 10th generation, like Switch 2, like this is the anniversary. We're on the 10th generation, 10th. Well, it wouldn't necessarily be the 10th anniversary, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo Switch 2, boom, dead. All of that is out of the water. You can't argue. You cannot argue a fact coming from a company themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. It's over.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing, because Nintendo's never really come out and said the things that Microsoft and Sony were saying.
Yeah,
like Sega never really did that either. They weren't like, that's the stuff you would have seen probably in magazine ads back then. So back then, yeah, Nintendo would be like next generation, whatever, blah, 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 like for like Nintendo 64 and stuff, right?
Right.
But in the social media era or in the video era, back when they were doing E3 and stuff like that, Nintendo never really said that. They said GameCube was a more sophisticated platform than PlayStation 2. They didn't say, hey, it's the next generation of whatever. They weren't talking the way that they talk. So I don't think Nintendo Japan doesn't really care about any of that. This is all colloquial US bullshit. They don't even operate in that space. They just know they got a new product to put out. They're not really thinking, hey, we got to make sure it's a home console because we got to make sure we fit in the generation specs for these individuals in the United States on Wikipedia so they can feel okay. Like, no, they're not. They're not even thinking that way.
If anything, they would say, and I think they've used this a couple times, here's what's next for Nintendo, or, you know, here's what we're going to next.
That's what they said about Wii U. Yeah, they said how you would play next, and then they said the next generation of Nintendo was NX, and that was Switch.
Yeah. So,
yeah, that was, and that's what kills me. And then so Gwen put it out there. He said that the wallpaper they released, he said they put them on the timeline. They actually, so when they did it during that January live stream they did a global event from Japan. and they showed like every Nintendo console in order, and they went that way. So clearly, the way that they were talking about this, like, hey, look, this is a successor to Wii U.
Yep.
At this point,
if I remember correctly, too, was it Robert or Juice Man Vaughn? I can't remember. Somebody was in New York, and they show you all the generations of all the handhelds on one side. And on the opposite side, you get all the generations of the systems, and Wii U is distinctly after Switch, not like y'all together.
And they're like, well, it's the first hybrid. Why are you making up a new category?
Right.
Nintendo didn't say hybrid.
So that
HAC stands for handheld and console. Console is the second part. Console. Like console. That part. You dock it and you play it at home. It kicks into a higher speed. Play it on your TV. It's a home console. Man, people believe what they want to believe, because what they don't want to do is put Nintendo in the same box as other people, because it hurts their feelings or some shit. And I'm just like, bro, like, they made a system. So, but I don't want to drown on it too much. But like, I feel that this new system is going to create a lot of the same old problems again, because people won't. It's gonna stir the pot, because now let's just call a spade a spade. This new platform is going to get rid of a lot of excuses that some studios were using to not support the platform. It's going to get rid of a lot of excuses for some fanboys to say why some studios weren't supporting the platform. So once that's out in the open and they start saying, hey, look, this is this, and it's a brand new blah, 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 and it's using this and this and this. And even if you want to scale up to this resolution, we have a solution for that. And you do this, and then it goes and it works. Now we got to come up with a new MacGuffin.
Yep.
Now it's like, well, it doesn't ray trace as well as, I'm like, these systems.
Yeah, we're on the ray tracing now. We're on the full-fledged ray tracing. So
yeah, and I'm like, none of these really do that well anyway. And they're like, well, it's not doing more games in 4K 60, and I'm like, have you seen these games on these other platforms?
Right.
Like,
this, it doesn't have a performance mode and and a quality mode. There we go. Performance and quality.
Oh, you mean that thing to overclock your system instead of having a developer's code right for it? Oh,
right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at a platform with over 16 gigs of RAM, and you're telling me why can't you just make that work? It's got 16 gigs of RAM. You should be able to do what you need to do. It's the bullshit for me at this point, because at some point you're just like, look, you have what you need in front of you. The canvas is fucking blank. Make the game.
Right.
You can't have excuses and say, well, it's not doing what we wanted to do. Bro, you got CPU over here. You've got enough cache on said CPU core. I mean, you can use 6 to 8 cores if you want to over here. You could use, up to 12 gigs of RAM at this point.
What's NVIDIA's little special thing? AMD's was RDNA. What's NVIDIA's with their man, I can't even think of the name. That everybody basically is just like absolutely sure the Switch will have.
It's going to be an Ampere architecture. So it'll have the RT cores and all that to do ray tracing or super sampling. Oh yeah,
DLSS. There we go.
So
they've got DLSS now. So,
and I'm still like, DLSS is fine, but I'd rather you just draw the game locally, and that look good too. How about we not have to draw the game in 480p and then scale it up with DLSS
and depend on something else to do it for you?
Yeah. How about we just make a good looking game? Because like they're able to make those on Switch, so you're gonna tell me you can't make them on more advanced hardware? Like, let's not get into that rabbit hole. I really don't want to get into that. It's great if it's there, for quote unquote more demanding games, or I use more demanding highly sarcastically because I'm trying not to say shitty broken code.
My question is Grand Theft Auto 5. What system was that? What
That's a
system? did they
PS3
make?
game.
Oh, PS3. What was the RAM on that?
PS3 was, depending on what you wanted to do, 256 megs.
Oh, so we're not even at a gig yet, and we still can't port.
Nope, the
that.
360 had 512.
Can't port that to Switch. Is that what I'm understanding? It's not powerful enough to be able.
Oh, they definitely couldn't port it to Wii U with 2 gigs of RAM. Oh my God, we couldn't do that at all.
Yeah,
how dare we?
It was not capable enough with its wait. With its 360 CPU. So we can't port GTA 5 to the Wii U, the last generation version with its 360 CPU and almost twice the amount of RAM.
So the excuse then was Wii U didn't have strong enough SIMD engine, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Don't write it for the CPU. Write it for the GPU. And they're like, we can't do that. It's like heterogeneous compute. What the fuck? Blah, blah, blah. And then the game got ported to PS4.
I was just going to say, and then the PS4 happened.
And what do you think they did? Heterogeneous compute.
Now it's capable. But it has just the right amount of RAM. It needed that much RAM in order to run.
Oh, that's what it was. You sure? Because that CPU, CPU leaves a lot to be desired on those. Even the current consoles, the CPU is kind of. I don't know. I don't know what people were thinking when they were saying, the Series X is a server grade CPU. I'm like, bro, you might want to look again. There's a lot of cache missing from those cores. If you're gonna call it server grade, nah, not it. Speaking from experience, not it. But no, man, it's just a thing. And I saw Xenoblade was mentioned in the chat. I really don't want to make this a really long shadow. I can do a ShadowCast on just Xenoblade. Really, really great game. Y'all need to go play that DLC. It's great. That entire franchise is amazing. If you have not played Xenosaga, go play Xenosaga. If you have not played Xenogears, go play Xenogears. If you have not played Xenoblade Chronicles X, go sell your car and buy a Wii U and buy Xenoblade Chronicles X. And
it's expensive now because you ain't getting it off of me.
Yeah, you definitely ain't getting it off of me either. You're going to have a serious problem. You try to take either one of my copies off of me. But how do you feel about Tears of the Kingdom, man? Are you going to be day one in it?
Oh, please, come on now. I feel like that's insulting that you even had to ask the question.
So I was watching the podcast. I hate I missed it or whatever because I wanted to talk to Jay about his Georgia Southern days playing in the arcades down there because you do get embarrassed down there because it's glass and everybody can see you when they walk by. You getting smoked. In any of the games there, but no, I'm obviously a Zelda head, but like, man,
you got to. I said Xenoblade, right?
I said it in 2017, man. I said fuck Zelda because Xenoblade, man. It's Zelda is Breath of the Wild would be game of the generation if Tears of the Kingdom ends up being trash, right? Come on. I think we all know Tears of the Kingdom is not trash. Right. So now we got this game that's going to be great for all intents and purposes. Going without saying pretty much at this point. Nintendo poured a lot of time into this game. So obviously they didn't do it for no reason. This might be, other than Breath of the Wild, this might be their longest development cycle for one of these games.
I think it is. Especially for a Zelda game, I think.
Yeah, because from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild, that was really close to 6 years. That was 2011. Yeah, 2011 to 2017.
Yeah.
I mean, it was probably ready for Wii U in 2016, but they had to do the whole Switch port thing. So
right.
But that still counts as 6 years. So now we're in another situation where give us 6 more years and you will have another Zelda. So No, man, I think this game is gonna set a lot of expectations of how, just like Breath of the Wild did, like how open world games are done.
Yeah.
And I hate it for the other platforms, man, because they're throwing everything at pixels and how that's supposed to look and all that. And I'm like, but you got to design a game around it, and it's got to feel real. Like things like, I don't know, if you have something that's made of ice, it should make other things cold around it.
Right.
Just, just little things like that, just little details that a Wii U game did in 2017.
Mm-hmm. That's what and I like that you played that video a little bit earlier, because if you also listen, they're talking about, all these PC games, and honestly, it really doesn't matter what system they're on, PC included. But they're talking about all these games that are having problems out the gate and that they're struggling to do this and that. And like, then you got, it was already my most anticipated game of this year. Anyway, already my number one. But when you have a bunch of games that came before it that aren't meeting expectations, let's just say, and then you have like a sequel that is already highly anticipated to a sequel to what people consider one of the greatest games of all time, and you got hype, like who I feel bad for anybody who has to come after that. And that's definitely including Starfield. Like that's how do you top that? I mean, let me be clear. How do you top that outside of journalism talking and hyping up your game? How do you top that though? Like that's a real struggle. And I feel bad too, because I mean it's Nintendo's own doing, but I feel like they dropped Xenoblade, that DLC, just a tad bit too close to Tears of the Kingdom. Like I would have definitely have taken that in the summertime, when there's downtime, or a little bit closer at the beginning of the year. But like I understand their schedule is already tight. But
yeah, that might have been a Monolith thing where they probably needed the help of their bigger team to finish off that DLC, and that required them to be done with Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
So
and you're not going to hold on to Tears of the Kingdom forever.
Yeah, you're not. You're going to make sure that game is ready to ship, and then you set your date out, 6 months or whatever for Tears of the Kingdom to ship, and then you start working on this DLC to get that cranked out.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's how it worked. They had to like stop and go back and stop and go back. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Because let's just be real. Like Zelda's going to be clearly Zelda's going to be the breadwinner. So yeah, you can't beat close to 30 million sold at this point. Like
no,
before it was questionable. Now like Zelda's up here with Mario now. So
I'm wondering how fast you think this is going to be one of the fastest. So I feel like you can say that about Zelda, but
I think it's
at
already
this point,
one of the fastest selling Zelda games.
I was going to say you can almost say that about any franchise at this point going on the Switch. Oh, it's going to be the fastest selling.
Yep.
But Tears of the Kingdom, yeah, like people who don't even, like I'm new at my job, and like people who don't even have a Switch are like, yeah, I got to play Breath of the Wild once.
Yep.
And I heard there was a new game coming out. And I'm like, yeah, there's a new game coming out. It comes out on Friday. And they're like, oh man, like I already pre-ordered for it. I'm like, you ain't even got a Switch. Oh, I just bought a Switch for that game. And I'm like, okay.
So like Gwen put this thing. So and this is the other thing too that I hate, because people are still gonna say this, right? All Nintendo did was say y'all motherfuckers are lying. Anytime they're like, hey, my game can't run and we can't do this. Look what kind of game. Look how big and ambitious this game is. Red Dead Redemption is really fucking big. It's not. There's no way it could. Look how many gigs it is. It can't have this expansive world and blah blah blah. And then people are like, bro, I'm lost in Breath of the Wild. I have yet to find a bear in that damn game. I have yet to find a bear in that game. The amount of different things you could do every time I watch a video, I see a place and I'm like, have I been there before? I'm not sure. Like it's just one of those things. This game is 6 years old, and I'm like, wait, what? How do you wait? What? How do you? Like today, I saw a video where a guy just pointed out the fact that, hey, did you know that the Cryonis cubes can only be destroyed with ancient weapons, or or how can I say this, in game dev or in a gamey way, Link can break it because it like smush him in between a place where he can't get to, and therefore you can't complete a puzzle and be stuck. So it breaks that way. But other than that, other than the gamey way to continue the game flow, the only natural things in the world that breaks that ice is other ancient weapons, which is amazing. The attention to detail is just stupid. You go to the Gerudo village and everybody's living like they're in like early Mesopotamia desert type. Like you look in their houses and stuff, and instead of like shelves, they have like insets in the side of the little house. Like just little details like that is just freaking amazing. And I don't know, man. I don't know how else to explain it, but they said, hey, we take a Xenoblade engine and make Zelda 1 with it. Go. Yep. You're in the middle of the world. Figure it out. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. So when somebody tells me, "Oh, Grand Theft Auto," I'm like, "Bro, have you seen a Zelda game?" Like,
that's what I'm saying. The physics alone. Are you serious?
They show you how open world game works. This part. This is an open world game. So don't talk to me about your Grand Theft Auto. Don't talk to me about your Call of Duty with follow over the person's head in front of you as you're in a forced cutscene.
Right.
To go to the next set piece for these planes that are about to blow up in the exact same way every single time you go to that set.
Every time. Boom.
Breath of the Wild, it happens different every single time you fight a Lionel. Like all kind of chaos. Like, or you can create your own chaos and have like, I don't know, just one dude just decided to say he's going to start a war. He had the giant and the Lionel and the damn ancient guardians all battling together. And like, you can only do this in games that are designed as well. So
right.
I don't know, man. I just try to I just want to prepare people because it's frustrating. It's frustrating, but just know it. So when you know it, just wink and be like, "Yeah, I knew y'all were going to do this because this is your stick. This is what you have to do because you have to gin up the console wars. You have to do that. You have to do that and have because there's nothing else for them to sell you. So their gimmick is specifications and little bullet points that they put on the back of the box.
Yeah.
And typically those are going to be more specifications. Well, this game has HDR, kind of. This one has 4K, kind of. Every other frame is probably 540p, but 4K. And they don't really have a way to sell you the game on its merits. Like, is it really, really fun? Some of them, lately, a lot of games I've been playing, it's kind of like you feel forced to go through it.
Man, I definitely feel that way.
I mean, just being real, like,
yeah.
Like, why am I doing this again? Like, I don't feel compelled to go forward. I don't know. I heard later on it gets really good, and I'm like, and I can't be like this because there's so many people that didn't like Xenoblade at first, and then they have to like go through whatever, blah blah blah. But at least there was something leading you to go towards the brick wall that was hitting you, which meant that, hey, get good because you're not good enough to get past this one part, right? There was at least curiosity to have you like, hey, maybe you should go over here and get owned by Telethia. Like, at least there was a reason for you to venture that way versus like some of these games. I'm like, I've seen that shiny wall 12 times. Yes, it is extremely high resolution. The reflection doesn't appear to be realistic to me because it's repeating a lot.
Right.
And I don't care if you ray traced it because you just ray trace something that was rasterized anyway. So it's going to have the same errors. I don't know, man. It's maybe had I not been so fond of rendering in the early days when it first popped off in the 90s, I would be a little bit more gullible to a lot of these talking points and these buzzwords when they come out. Because I hear ray tracing and I'm like, so the real ray tracing, you're going to scan rays across the scene to determine how light is going to reflect through every surface in the air particles, light particles. They're going to intersect and they're going to go through fog. They're going to go through smoke. They're going to go, all that's going to distill, and depending on what type of material it is, it's going to reflect a different way. Like, because even skin reflects like a certain way. It's not like plastic. It reflects differently. There's diffusion. Like, all that's going to happen? You sure? Well, no, because we got these different kits for different pieces of materials, and you won't be able to do all of them. But if you download just a little bit here, and we're talking about PC at this point, we're talking about if you had 3 or 4 4080s and you stack them in your card, like, you still have to do this piecemeal shit. And this is what you're selling me? I don't get what I'm paying for at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I had ever followed the buzzword that you're talking about back then, I'm not getting that promise that was happening in 480p in movies. So you're telling me in 4K, I'm going to get this every other frame, and it's not going to be picture perfect. I'm not going to get the reflections that I should expect. I'm not going to get the shadows that I should expect. You know, like, this technology is really old that we're trying to mimic right now in real time. So if we can't get it done in real time, then just say that. Just say there's going to be concessions. We can't really do it. But yeah, that's yeah.
So how, if we're talking about the Switch 2, and we're talking about games that can or can't run on it, what I kind of see going for, you know, third-party development or third-party in general when they're talking to journalists, early on is either going to be, we haven't gotten a dev kit for it, so we're not developing for Switch. We're only developing for PS5 and the series. It is not under our list because we've already had these games in works. So maybe down the line is what they'll say. Or they'll keep using excuse 1 and 2, and then finally, like a year or so down the line, when some other machine comes around, they'll say, okay, well, it seems like they skimped out on insert whatever problem is here, whatever problem they think is here. And they aren't capable of doing that anymore because it's behind the times again. Nintendo slowed down.
That's probably what's going to end up happening. What they're betting on is probably a PS5 Pro. They're probably betting on that, or just another product.
Mm-hmm.
Probably another Steam Deck or something to use at that point. But even then, I'm like, but you know the difference between the Steam Deck and the Switch. Like, developers directly cater to Nintendo Switch, and they don't directly cater to Steam Deck.
Right.
Steam Deck, you're at the mercy of what's available on the library, and you're hoping that some of the games are compatible. And even if they're compatible, your mileage will vary, especially if you're playing on a battery. So I think they'll still try to use that issue, but I think most gamers that have had experience with a Nintendo Switch, they know what, and they understand what a Steam Deck is too. They'll be able to see the difference. Social media has kind of screwed them. There are a lot of people that will still fall for this, but there's a lot of people that won't. I guess the biggest issue that I see, and I'm not ignoring you, Dark Angel. I see all your points you're talking about. And that makes sense. But I'll get to it in a minute. But I'm just really feeling like they'll try everything they tried with Wii U, just like they did with Switch. Mm-hmm. They'll try all of it again. They'll complain about whatever the storage is for it, because that's the only thing they could really kind of run to if the specs are meeting everything, right? So they say, well, how am I going to run these games? Because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, weren't the games way smaller on Switch? Won't they be way smaller for the other Nintendo system? Shut up. But that people will have to speak back. Because they're going to continue to try to push the narrative and say everything that the Xbox and the PlayStation go through and everything that PC goes through, that means the same for Nintendo. And nobody should really expect that.
Right.
Because Nintendo doesn't design their systems that way. Even though the Switch is literally an off-the-shelf product, they still had stuff in place to say, hey, look, we know there might be large file sizes unless we do this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they worked that out. So you got Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild being two of the largest first-party games that Nintendo has ever made, and they're still under 32 gigs.
Still under 32 gigs. They're still under 20 gigs.
Yeah.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
So it's just a thing. And so Dark Angel, the point wasn't about whether we blame the developers or not, because we know the developers are not at fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who's forcing them to do the fuckery that they're doing? The goal is, hey, we got to rinse, lather, repeat with the product. The game that you were just talking about on the podcast, Sandstorm, is the sequel to Fallen Order.
Yeah.
You already have an engine in place. All you're doing now is just making a better game from what already exists. And what was the end result of that?
Yeah.
So
that performance is shot.
At that point, I'm like, project management, bro. Project management. You can't say you spent all your time doing R&D when the R&D has already been done for the existing engine that you're using. So at that point now, like, I would expect those issues with the first game.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a sequel, well, an unofficial sequel using the same engine, like, at that point, it's kind of hard not to point at the people behind the keyboard before the game shipped. And if you point at the people behind the keyboard before the game shipped, they're going to be like, it ain't me. I did what I had to do within the time frame that I had, whether I'm contracted or not or whatever, right?
Right.
So who paid them? And they're never going to take the onus. And the people that's supposed to hold them accountable, they're owned by them. They will never turn and just say, hey, big mighty publisher, why are you rushing these games so much? Because these developers out here have talent. And first of all, you're not paying them because you're putting them on a contract. You're not making them full-time employees, just like Dark Angel said.
Right.
But I mean, Game Idea got kind of mentioned it too. And that's a big problem too. So now you have a project out here. You're not paying people to be full-time. And then you hire a whole bunch more people right before it's time to go gold and do crunch.
Mm-hmm.
And then you wonder why your product is absolute shit. And then you're like, well, because this game was so demanding, it definitely couldn't run on a Nintendo platform. I'm like, you sure Nintendo would even want that on their platform in the state that that's in? You think they would even greenlight that shit? They're gonna be like, oh, we taking this off the eShop, bro.
Right.
We don't want to be associated with this. So it's just one of those things where how do you even? I'll just say prepare for disappointment. That's what I'll say. You know what Martin Avengers gamers say all the time? Prepare for disappointment. Prepare for that. Prepare to be disappointed by your favorite YouTuber and your favorite gaming outlet, because they will disappoint you. Even though you know they're going to do it. They're going to do it, and it's still going to make you hang your damn head. Trust me, they've been disappointing me for the past 20 years. I knew that they were going to say the shit that they say, and they do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it sucks, man. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the way it works. Like nobody's volunteering to say, "Hey, look, we're going to fund all your bills at this press outlet." So they got to make money some type of way, which means they got to host ads. And if they host ads, who pays for them? I mean, it's probably non-gaming companies that do it too, because IGN is kind of like moving around to movies and stuff, so they can get ads from like deodorant companies and all this other kind of foolishness. But typically speaking, it's going to be publishers that are trying to pitch their games on that website. because they know that website also has a huge following on social media and stuff like that too. So they put their ads in front of their videos on social media too.
Right.
And they work out deals. And whenever they make a post on social media, they get a nice little check from the publisher by talking about their game on social media. Oh, don't think they do it for free. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart.
Oh, no. You got to get paid for that.
They're not so rich Kim Kardashians. So as long as y'all know what to expect, I guess that's kind of where the rubber meets the road there. And I just want y'all to know, it's more them. And yeah, I hate to say it, it's a lot of talented developers out there. There's a lot of people working with their wife pregnant. It's a lot of like wives pregnant developing. All kind of scenarios. They're putting their heart and soul into a game until it's finished, and turns out a lot of times it's not finished. They might have done their end or whatever, but there's a project manager somewhere like, we gotta make sure.
What
just look the other way.
What happened to game testers? Is that a dying breed or something? Because like I feel like if some of these companies still had game testers, I feel like they would not be
Public
shit
beta.
like how they are.
Day one patch.
Oh, I forget.
Yeah, I was
you
that
get to be
too.
the game tester.
Yep.
Because you always wanted to be that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You get to pay to do it. You get to pay $70 to do it. And maybe, just maybe, we'll fix it.
Right.
Maybe.
What did they say? We heard we listened to what you said, and here's what we're gonna do for you.
Yep.
It ain't get done.
Imagine going to a car dealership, leaving, and your brakes don't work. And they'd be like, give it about 4 weeks. We'll fix it in post.
We'll patch it in there.
Yeah. Just Fred Flintstone it for a while. Just open the car door. Just kind of hang your foot out there. Don't drive that fast because you need meat on the bottom of your foot. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You bought a washing machine and it doesn't drain. Oh, that's fine. Just, get a crane and turn your washing machine upside down when you're done with it. You might have to mop up a little bit. It's fine. And we'll fix it in post. We'll send out an update for you.
What do they call it? We'll do a minor patch.
Yeah, we'll do a minor patch. Fix the problem for you. You paid all this money and we know you've been waiting so long. Here's your washer that actually drains water when it's done. Yeah. I mean, we know you've been wearing soggy clothes for a couple weeks. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. You shorted your dryer out because you put them in there soaking ass wet. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
If you want to, you can sell that one, and we got a definitive version.
Yep, the definitive version had the patch already. You should have bought that one, my guy. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yep.
Company.
And if you buy the Ultra Legacy Kobe Edition washer, it'll even have hot water.
Thank you for the extra.
Yeah, that's just killing me. Just killing me. But that's kind of where we at right now. And no other passion has this type of issue. Like this is not a problem. Like you're not getting DLC songs after you buy the album. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. Just not. So it's
weird, man.
Yeah, it's really strange. Like this is the only medium that does this. I really don't understand it. Like movies don't work this way. Nothing else works this way.
No.
And it's clearly one of the highest grossing industries around. So you figure they care about the customer. They got them this high grossing. But they just figure the majority of people are their kids or whatever, and they're not.
Right.
They're not using their hard-earned money to pay for all these games and these consoles and these mini consoles and all the DLCs and all the external media that you have to buy now to make sure you can save these games on the space that they intentionally blew up for so long. Yeah, it is what it is, man. But I think it's just going to be more of the same. Honestly, it'll repeat.
Yeah.
So I was going to talk about Metroid Prime 4. I think I'm going to save that for when I do the ShadowCast with Rob, because I know he wanted to talk about that game. He probably wanted to talk about Zelda too. I think
He's real passionate about.
he is. But that's the thing though. We don't know what's going on in 2023 and 2024, man, and we ain't heard a word about Metroid.
No.
But I think I know it's cooking. It's just
I'm still feeling like this is it's going to be this year. But then that kind of takes away from the it's going to be cross gen unless they drop something. But that's not really like Nintendo to drop a game in November, and then let's just say hypothetically the Switch 2 comes out in March, to drop the same game and being like, this is the definitive. That's not their style.
what I do think will be cross gen. It might not be this fall, but maybe next fall, and that'll be the new 3D Mario game. That's what I know will be cross gen. That's just Super Mario Club in my head.
Smart money, yeah.
Like why not? Money. And it's not gonna play any different. It'll just be whatever the new system does will, look better or whatever, or be better, have longer battery life on the go or some shit. Whatever the new things are gonna be, whatever new controller it uses, no telling. That's why. And so Dark Angel saw exactly what I was talking about. He's talking about something. Oh, games were broken a long time ago, 30 years ago. Yeah, why did you use just PC examples? Because you knew if we start talking about the console versions, those games were complete. And also developers made very specific versions that catered to what those consoles did good. And that's not happening anymore today. Everybody's getting the same shit, like the same build shoehorned onto a platform. And you get a bad running game because they decided your platform is not the platform of choice.
Yep. Like, oh, we're going to develop for the Xbox, but we're just going to port this just over to the PC and the PlayStation 5. That with that Xbox code, we're just going to move everything over, and it's just going to be, we got it.
I said it all the time. I said it in my Elephant in the Room video a long time ago. I like the fix. The fix is here. Like, Switch is so weak. Like, make Switch lead platform. And they're like, there's no way we could. Yeah, you can develop for Switch, then port from Switch to the other platforms. Done. So you're gonna tell me that PS4 and PS5 can't run Switch code? It can't handle. It can't handle a game built ground up for Switch to be ported over? You sure? That's the argument you want to make? You sure? That don't sound too good.
What's so funny is I've heard people be like, well, if they made Switch lead platform, then it's gonna. They use the example of what's the Capcom game, Monster Hunter Rise, Hunter Rise, from there to PC. And then it's like, well, look, like the movement and all the other stuff looks like more of a Switch game, not like a PS5. But let's use the same logic, right? Let's take this same logic and make one of those lead platforms, and they just so happen to have a Switch version game. How does that work? How is he able to move like he moves in those games, but it doesn't work the other way around? Like,
like people they come up with whatever they want to, man. It's just weird. It's weird. They said Wing Commander 3 did run on the 486. I believe that. I don't know how well that would have been, but it probably did run on the 486. That's the old that's those old gateways back then. Or I'm sorry, Packard Bell. I'm dating myself. Quantum L. Okay, what's going on, Quantum L? Say you're definitely enjoying the news episode of ShadowCast. I hope all is well for you, Sansor McDowell. Great point about making Switch lead platform as well. Yes, it should be. It should have been a long time ago. That would have been the big fix.
Yep.
And I don't know what. Well, I know why. Me saying that, like, why haven't you heard IGN say that? Why haven't you heard GameSpot say that? When they talk about, third-party games and whatnot, why haven't they mentioned that? because even when Sony had the weakest hardware, it had a lot of lead platform games with PS2. And depending on who you ask, PS3 was either arguably weaker or arguably a little bit stronger than the 360. Yet it was lead platform on a couple of games, or quite a few games actually. So, like, how is it only okay for Sony to be the lead platform when they have the weakest hardware? They've only had the strongest hardware recently, and that was PS4.
Mm-hmm.
Every other generation, they were one up in one way or another.
Yep.
So, like, I mean, they couldn't even keep textures in place on PS1. I don't want to go there, but PS1 was a great platform because they had a shitload of games.
Mm-hmm.
But it obviously wasn't perfect. PS2, like I said, didn't even have hardware transforming lighting. It didn't have that in hardware.
And you can't act like but with Nintendo, we have to, you do have to compete with all Nintendo first party stuff.
Yeah.
More or less. But Sony, more or less, you got to compete with them too. They all have first party. I mean, yeah, Nintendo does the best. That's facts. Facts on that. But you feel like it's going to be any easier if you're trying to bring out such and such game and, dude bros only play first person shooters on Xbox? Like,
here's my thing. Why do you care, and why is that your stance though? Because your goal is, as a third party publisher, your goal is to promote your game to as many people as possible so you can sell as many copies, right?
Right.
Why wouldn't you have it everywhere? Why would you avoid the most popular home console, the fastest selling home console of all time, but you ported it to phones? You ported it to phones weaker than the Switch. You ported it to PS4, you ported it to PC, you ported it to Xbox, but you avoided the Nintendo hardware. It doesn't make any sense to me as a publisher, because even if, let's say it doesn't sell that well on that platform, say it sold only 20, that's 20 more. And if you say, oh, well, the cost isn't, because the marketing alone. Let's not forget, Switch is a hybrid console.
Right.
What does that mean? That means you take it outside of the house. That means that you're literally advertising games everywhere you go. So the odds of somebody saying, what game is that? Even if they don't buy it on Switch, they're buying it somewhere else because they saw it on Switch.
Right.
And that helps you, third party. It doesn't have to help Nintendo. It just has to help you. So why wouldn't you want your Doom logo everywhere on every platform? Why wouldn't you want to see the GTA logo on everything that can boot up?
Right. I mean, that's what they're trying to do anyway, with the exception of Nintendo.
Yeah, I just don't see the point other than petty squabbles from fucking 30 years ago. That's the only thing I can think of at this point. That's the only thing I can think of, because it's not business anymore.
No.
It's petty bullshit, and I'm like those presidents of Nintendo are not even there anymore.
It's not like GTA 5 just be, even though what did they get it for free? PS5? Was it for free? I don't think it was for free. But even though Sony put in some extra money to have it on the PS5 for whatever reason, it's not like that just became an exclusive to Sony. Like it still runs on the Xbox Series X and S. So you can't say, well, it's because they only go here. We only deal with them. Well, you don't.
And so I get it, yeah. And so because of the whole Microsoft situation right now, we found out a lot of shit we probably shouldn't have been able to know, right? Like Sony had deals where they were keeping games away from other platforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine, well and good. But that wasn't all the publishers, and that wasn't every single game from all those publishers. Those clauses were very specific.
Right.
So it's not just Capcom keeping away from Nintendo, because clearly Capcom published it for Nintendo, but in weird, dicey ways, where we make Ultra Street Fighter 2 for the Switch as a launch game instead of Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5, maybe.
Right.
Like just weird shit like that. Like it's just strange decisions.
We're unsure about how well it's gonna sell, so we're gonna give you Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, like Dead or Alive couldn't be on Wii U, but it was on the 3DS. Like those kind of weird decisions were that's just kind of stuff that's just odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
Tekken showed up, but that was a strange release. That was a very strange release for Wii U.
Yeah.
That's the
It was a
only
welcome
time I've seen a Tekken on a Nintendo platform.
Yeah.
So it's just odd. It's odd knowing that certain games are just like, we're just not gonna go over there for some reason. We'll go everywhere else but there, and it's just strange. But yeah, they were. I would say they were money hadn't before then too, because a lot of that stuff, the Aries are saying they were money hadn't since the PS4.
They've been money hadn't.
So, yeah, some of that stuff was happening before, because we're talking about games that, like, Wii U launched before PS4, and it was still having issues. Like, Wii was having issues. Like, let's not forget how well Wii was selling. A lot of developers did turn around and say, "Okay, we're fucking up. Let's go build this Call of Duty game." Like, so some studios were turning around and trying to fix it, because they saw how well it was selling. Like, we can't just sit here and not make money off of this. Other studios are just like, no, we're not going to make a Tekken for that. I'm like, oh, okay, that's probably the easiest money you can make, but okay, cool. So it's just weird stuff like that. Like the Final Fantasies, which for a long time we knew, who was buttering their bread for the most part, until they started doing Xbox stuff. And then we're like, so you're doing Xbox stuff when still the majority of your old audience is still sitting over here on the Nintendo side, right? To the point where they're buying games from your ex-developers. They're buying Xenoblade games from your ex-developers. They're buying, Golden Sun from your ex-developers. Like, all of these studios came from Square. Brownie Brown and Monolith came from Square. And we had no problems buying the games they made. So you figure, I mean, it just would make all the sense in the world. Maybe, and it took Switch, I guess, to bring them around. But now we're talking about games that should have came out for GameCube and Wii are finally making their way to the 9th generation platform of Nintendo, like 3 generations later. So the damage was already done at that point.
Right.
Jet Set Radio is a Sega thing. Yeah, I clearly money had it. That was that situation where Sega was working different deals with different, like the whole Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg shit for GameCube. It was just, Sega was doing whatever they could. They're just looking like, hey, where can we put whatever? And I was like, look, I love Gun Valkyrie. I love Jet Set Radio Future. I need to play Otogi though. But it was a lot of Sega games. Panzer Dragoon, obviously. It's a lot of Sega greats that came out of that whole Death of Dreamcast shit. That was a weird 6th generation was. We got a lot of good games out of it, but it was like you had to own everything in that generation. Like you were missing a lot if you didn't own everything.
If you didn't own Lost Kingdoms 1 and 2, I feel bad for you, son.
So good. So good, bro. So good. It doesn't seem like it, but so good. From Software, aka not Dark Souls.
Not Dark Souls.
Yep. So good. Still just as hard though, but
yeah. God, but if they ever got that franchise and turned it into a Dark Souls franchise, I'd be so depressed.
It's like everything will be Dark Souls.
Yeah, everything will be dark. What are you doing? It's a card game. Yep. It's got to be Dark Souls style though.
So we'll save. We can go ahead and end the podcast here unless anybody had any questions. But I wanted to save the Metroid talk for I guess the next ShadowCast. But if I can get Rob on here, and we'll go from there. Quantum said it would seem the industry is still upset that Nintendo didn't do what they wanted. with the move to disc-based games instead of sticking with cartridges on N64, etc. Yeah, and that's a developer thing. Well, I won't say developer, publisher kind of thing, because they didn't want to pay. They didn't want to pay the money for carts during that time more than anything else. That was insanely expensive for studios back then at the time. They didn't like that. They didn't want to pay the licensing fees or be part of the dream team then at the time or whatever. But you know, I just can't. I can't look at a studio like EA and be like, oh my God, whatever will they do to afford developing for that platform? I mean, EA, come on now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense to me. And at the time, back then, like Capcom, well, Square was in they were in debt, but Capcom was kind of booming then at the time. They were making all the arcade money for sure, and then pretty much they were printing money. They were printing money on PS2 a lot too. So
yeah, it's kind of funny to think about it. Now you say EA. I remember that EA was like EA and Nintendo were like they were close, especially in that 6th generation. You got all the Harry Potter games. I mean, everybody remembers the street games. Like they got all of them, all of them. Is and the Need for Speed games, like EA was doing some stuff with Nintendo, and I think like we've all seen, that went real sour when EA was like, yeah, let's go ahead and make your online, and they're like,
yeah.
Nah,
they're like,
okay.
We found a cheaper way to do it. Nah,
we're
not.
good. We got it.
Yep.
They ain't like that.
Yep. Dark Angel talking about how the games were licensed and reprogrammed, so they could release on certain there were, so back then it was there were, so that was back during the vicious Sega and Nintendo era then, because that was the whole seal of quality days back then, when they were like, look, we're gonna own all the means of production on how you produce a cartridge and how you do anything. So if you're even thinking about making a game for our platform, these are all the rules. You can't do this can't leave here, this can't go there, this can't go here. And Sega was doing the same thing. So you had games like, if a game got ported to another platform or whatever, they had to strip a lot of the code. They couldn't reuse anything or whatever, because the product that you made for Nintendo effectively was owned by them, and the same for Sega as well, because you were making a product that specifically talked to registers on that platform. They're like, this goes nowhere else, kind of situation, and you couldn't make the game any other type of way. So, but honestly, you would have had to make different builds anyway, because those platforms were so vastly different back then.
Right.
And you're talking about who wants to make like a cross-platform available assembly game. Like, that sounds like a nightmare. I wouldn't ever want to make a multi-platform game back then, and I didn't have individual studios to make individual parts of the game. I saw how the good talent, what they would do is they would make really, really good art assets and make them in different file configurations. So no matter what language you use or what target platform you had a way to break all the pixels down to make the art that you need. That's where a lot of people did good, and you're even able to go back in the day now and then emulate those games or make another build of those games for other platforms because of the way that they made their art accessible after the fact. And a lot of those games are lost to time for that reason too. So, like he said, Sega had to reprogram the game for Stretch for their own version of Final Fight. Yeah, and then the same thing. There was a demake of Street Fighter 2 on NES. I remember seeing that a lot in gaming magazines, and I guess it never released. I think it's an unreleased game. I thought it was released at some point. Sometime in the middle of the 5th generation, I thought Street Fighter 2 came out for NES, but I guess it wasn't a thing. But I mean, it does exist, but I don't think it was an official release. And I got one more question from Dart Void, and he says, "Do you think Nintendo will announce their next gen system during Gamescom in August?"
Announce it?
Announce. I'm saying no.
No. They announced the original Switch in October, and that was a pretty quick turnaround. I want to say 6 months or less.
Yep.
For them to drop the Switch.
Yep.
I'm thinking that they're going to use the same moves. There's nothing that tells me that they are going to change tactics, especially the only thing that you can expect from Nintendo, because always expect the unexpected from them. But the only thing that you can really expect from them is that if something really goes right or something really, really goes well, expect them to do certain things very similar to how they did it the first time. So obviously the Wii to Wii U thing, they thought that was going to go well. It didn't, but they already see like the fruits and the labor of the Switch. I don't, and it's still really not slowed down like that. So I would expect them to look at that and be like, all right, October, November is probably about the time we want to say something. If they really want to hurt feelings, go ahead and do it in November and shut everybody's holiday down. Just cancel everybody's holiday. You're done. You're done. But yeah, I'm thinking probably closer to October and November.
Okay. Yeah, that's similar to what I was saying earlier. It's Nintendo saw the fruits of their labors with that. They knew how to manipulate the news. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, keep Gaming Press out of it, if at all possible. So do not mass produce until it's about time for you to release your information. Because as I mentioned earlier, Semi-Accurate is going to get it. And they're going to leak it. Well, they won't leak it, but they'll do their report or whatever. And everybody that has an account for the pay site, they'll be able to sign their NDA or whatever. Then they'll do their own report a month afterward or whatever. Like, so you don't want 6 months time to exist in between the time Semi-Accurate gets information about you producing and you doing a presentation. Yeah. You want to do your presentation and hopefully Semi-Accurate finds out after that, or maybe a little bit before that, maybe a couple of weeks before that. Don't give any big lead time to that. You want to announce this, and the press will be surprised.
Yep.
And then go dark. Don't say nothing else. Say everything about the system that you need to say, and then go dark. Yep. So there's nothing for them to misconstrue. No extra words for somebody being interviewed about it or anything like that. No, just go dark until January of next year or whenever you're going to release it again, a couple of weeks before you're getting ready to release it, and then do another blowout of all your games and everything else. And that's it. And then the system launches and it's in people's hands. Yeah. And now the media has no chance to massage the message. You can't do it. You can't come out with your hate articles and why I think the Nintendo Switch, blah, blah, blah. Those videos will all flop.
Yeah. We all got it in their
hands and they know you're full of shit.
So, we all got the Switch at the same time. What do you think about your Switch?
Yep.
What do you think about your Switch? Yeah.
And that's probably what they'll end up doing. They'll control the message that exact same way. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We can go ahead and call it. I had one more thing here. I think we talked about it before already, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna do a deep dive on the gameplay systems. I don't think there's gonna be too much story revealed.
Are you gonna watch it?
Yeah, I'll watch it. It's tomorrow night. I'll watch it tomorrow night.
Had this been like last week, maybe even the week before, I probably would say I'll watch it. But the fact that this game comes out the following day,
yeah, you're like, why?
Yeah, nah.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
You want to find out yourself and just play through it. Yeah,
yeah,
I understand. It's just weird, man. I like Mother's Day weekend, bro. Like that's just
right.
I don't know why they picked this. Well, I mean they're Japanese, but it's
a week after, almost a week, a little bit a week after the original Breath of the Wild.
Yep, because it was the 3rd, I think, of March. Yeah. It kind of makes sense there. We're kind of doing it that way. But yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So this is ShadowCast, 34 would be in the books. Yeah, we'll always answer your questions the best we can, man. I'll try to go through as many as we can and go from there. Appreciate you guys hanging in there and watching this. Got 32 concurrent still that y'all stayed all the way through to the end. That's pretty good. But yeah, appreciate y'all letting us rap a tad and hang out and listen to me on my soapbox for the first God knows how many minutes. But Sandstorm, thank you for coming on, man. Let people know where they can find you, man, and pimp your channel, please.
Oh yeah, most definitely. You can find me at Sandstorm McDowell, like you see down here below, on the Sandstorm Show. Also, Sandstorm McD is the Twitter handle. Why does my computer keep going off? There we go. We normally have a Stormcast, is what I call my shows. Stormcast on Saturdays at 9 o'clock. We will not have one this Saturday because it is Sandbox's his birthday weekend. So we're going on a father-son trip. Goofy 90s style, you know what I'm saying? So gotcha. But we will be playing Tears of the Kingdom Friday night, since that actually comes out on Friday. I'll grab my copy Thursday night, Friday morning. And we'll be playing that. Other than that, make sure, I always got to say this, make sure you go over to my co-host's channel, Trey Vito. That's Trae. Vito, he does work with the rest of us, with the rest of the Wing podcast. And yeah, he's growing his channel as well. So make sure you go over there and hit subscribe as well.
Yep. And I always say, try to pimp the other channel. Make sure y'all follow Sandstorm McDowell. Make sure you follow J Fleming Winglet channel. GBGINU, the game idea guy, and Mr. Action Jack. Make sure you follow us all, and follow Debo too. Make sure you follow
Fangirl,
yeah. Follow Fangirl Review on Twitter and YouTube. Make sure we get everybody in the crew represented. So other than that, you ain't gotta follow me. Fuck that. Y'all can unfollow me if y'all want to. I don't care. Just
unfollow and refollow.
As long as everybody else gets followed and subscribed to, I appreciate it. So, but we're gonna call it a night. Appreciate y'all, and that's another one in the books. Later, y'all.
Peace.